All right. Well, good morning. Peter Schott here with Sales Your Way. I'm here with Tim. Been a friend of mine that I've gotten to know on social media through Twitter. I think is how we first got introduced. Correct? You want to just take a second, introduce yourself, and tell people a little bit about what you do?
Sure thing. Yeah, I think it was on Twitter, and then you were on my podcast a year or so ago. My name's Tim Hammerich. I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm an agribusiness recruiter, and so a headhunter. Basically, I have my own business doing that called AgGrad. It's at aggrad.com. And then I also have that podcast that Peter was a part of called The Future of Agriculture, where we explore the people, companies, and ideas shaping the future of ag. So a lot of stories related to ag tech, sustainability, food security, and ag entrepreneurship.
Cool. So with Sales Your Way, what I do is I'm helping freelancers, co-founders, and people that either don't think of themselves as being in sales or hate sales or afraid of it. How can they make sales something that's authentic and compelling, that is a part of their mission and gets their idea out there? And so one of the things that I've been doing with this is these weekly videos where I interview a subject matter expert or someone who's really passionate about a topic, just to get their input on it. And we just have these little conversations about whatever the topic is of the day or the week. And Tim, I approached you to talk about personal branding. One of the things that's really impressed me about the work that you do is when I think of what you do with sales is you've done an amazing job of curating a personal brand around yourself and your expertise in the industry beyond just, I'm trying to recruit people, I'm trying to be a headhunter, as you said. There's kind of this full encompassing circle of a personal brand that you built. And so I asked you to talk with me about that today, and really appreciate you coming on to do that.
Yeah, no problem. I know you said you're looking for people who are either experts or passionate. I'm probably more on the passionate side than the expert side, but I'm happy to share my experiences on the subject.
All right. So when did you first have this realization that I need to have a personal brand? What was that like for you? What was that moment?
Yeah, I don't know that I can point back to a moment, but I can tell you this. My background is in commodity trading, so on the feed and grain side, and I saw recruiting as a way that I thought lended itself to my skill set, but also a way that I could differentiate myself. There's no barriers to entry on recruiting. Anyone can call themselves a recruiter, and you pick up a client and you start trying to fill their jobs. There's really no barrier to entry at all. But I thought I could differentiate myself by targeting young professionals. There's this demographic that is 2 to 7 years beyond college, early in their career, that maybe they start down one path and they're ready to explore another path, or maybe they felt like they've learned a lot in their first role, but are ready for the next challenge. And I just thought there was a sweet spot in there. Along with that, in order to target those people, I knew I needed to be more progressive than competing recruiters on social media, and exploring what's new and what's interesting and what's exciting about agriculture. It couldn't be kind of the old guard type of content. So, I was already in that mindset when I stumbled upon people like Gary Vaynerchuk that are really doing the personal brand thing right. And early on the podcast, I had Vance Crowe from Monsanto on the podcast, and he shared some really, really good wisdom, which was, find the problem you want to solve. Mm-hmm. and kind of identify yourself with that problem. Right. And so all of this kind of converged into me saying, okay, the problem I want to solve is top tier talent finding rewarding careers. And so I just kind of went with that, and that's led me in all sorts of different directions.
So you went from that idea to let's do something about this. What were some of your first steps and first attempts in creating a personal brand? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, at first it was really just blog posts. So aggrad.com, a lot of people don't know, but when I was still working and moonlighting doing this, it was called Ag Booster, which is just a horrible name. I don't know why it was called Ag Booster. But so I opened up like a WordPress blog, agbooster.wordpress.com, and just started blogging about interesting careers in agriculture. Some of those blog posts migrated themselves over to AgGrad when we branded as AgGrad. So it's really just writing articles. And what's amazing is, you just start creating content, and the process of creating content propels you into certain business situations. And so early on in AgGrad, for example, I did a profile I wanted to look at management consulting in agriculture. And so I did a profile on management consulting. And now the company that is profiled in that blog post has since become a client of mine. And so it's that process of just putting yourself out there and creating content, even if it doesn't seem like a big deal, can really propel that business forward. And it's been huge for me. And then LinkedIn as well. Once I said, you know what, I'm not a food and ag recruiter. I am an agribusiness recruiter. And I just wanted to kind of stake my flag in that term. Mm-hmm. It really is kind of built momentum from there.
Right. Yeah. And I think of, content's a great place to start. And you mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk earlier, and he talks a lot about his early days with Wine Library and doing his YouTube videos and how they were just terrible to start and no one was watching, but he just kind of pushed through that. And so, as you start writing this content and at first nobody's watching it, I'm assuming you weren't just an overnight viral success on your content, right?
Luckily, some of those early posts never saw any eyeballs, I think, which is probably a good thing. Yeah.
So I know a lot of people, it's easy to start. It's so easy to post a blog. There's hardly any barrier to entry on that. You can have a site up in a few minutes and you can start writing whatever you want. Most people make it through a few posts and then they stop, right? What kind of kept you going through that when that uncertainty and that doubt started to kind of creep up on, am I really supposed to be doing this?
Yeah. And I would be lying to say I just kept going and, kept publishing every week, because there were times where it kind of faded into the background. For example, right now, if you go to aggrad.com, there hasn't been a blog post on there since January 8th, which is embarrassing to me. So it's not linear. And I don't want people watching this who think, oh boy, yeah, I started to do that. And then I fizzled out, to think like it's over, because it is not perfect. It is not pretty. It's not linear. But what kind of kept me going was individuals. So there would be one individual that read a post or heard a podcast or saw a video and said, hey, that was cool. That was helpful. Thanks. And just I think what we get too wrapped up in is the metrics of oh, wow, only 3 people have seen my video. And one of them was my mom. You know what I mean? But if the other 2 people that saw your video, found it helpful, that's really good. And you should be very, very encouraged by that, or read your post, or whatever the case may be. And so for me, it was the individuals. And I try to spread that message to others, because my first year in business, I really focused on, hey, if I can just help a few individuals, I think I can build a business off of that. And then the second year I thought, okay, we've helped some people, so now let's just blast this thing out and get big. And I'll tell you, that was the wrong approach. So now here I'm in my third year now, and it's no, we're going to go deeper with the people we're helping. Yep. And if you have some validation, even if it's one person, that means there's other people out there like them, in my opinion.
And I just had an experience this week where some of the content that I've been sharing on Sales Your Way, somebody reached out to me and said there was a article that I post on goal setting. It's a 25-page ebook that I shared that someone else had written, and I'd taken a quote on just mindset and some things with that and shared it with that. And he told me that he shared that with 4 or 5 people already, and it's been very helpful for him and for others. And so, you get those little glimpses of, this is doing something. So when you first started creating this brand, did you kind of strategize in terms of what message you were trying to communicate, or what you were trying to present out to the market, or what were your goals in that? What did that process look like for you?
Yeah, it's another one that it's just an evolving, iterative process. It never seems to just happen, like that. And it never seems, you're always tweaking it. So right now, if you go on our site, it's find your place in modern agriculture. That's kind of our mission, to help people find their place in modern agriculture. We believe there's enough value in that proposition where if we can do that, we can generate revenue from our client companies that we work with and offer a ton of value to a job seeker. And so that's kind of what the message has become. At first it was more, let's connect job seekers and employers. And of course, there's a lot of platforms out there doing that. That's great as well. But what we realized is, a website's not the best place really to connect people. So rather than do that, we wanted to offer career discovery tools. We wanted to offer tools to equip them to network in person and to reach out directly. We didn't want to force ourselves in between that relationship. We wanted to facilitate that relationship on its own a little bit.
Yeah. So what were some of your biggest successes or biggest mistakes or laughable moments that you've had in developing a personal brand?
Yeah, the mistakes are easier to remember than the successes. Like I said, early on, I thought, okay, we've had some success. Now we have some money. We're not worried about going out of business. So let's just fuel the fire by pouring a bunch of cash into the business, which it was really premature on my part. We didn't have a model. I thought, money would solve the problem. And so we ended up just, spreading our message far and wide, which is good. However, we didn't really have a model, right? Okay, once we spread that message far and wide, from a marketing standpoint, like how does that lead to sales? How does that grow the business? And I really hadn't had that piece figured out. So that was probably my biggest mistake I've made so far. As far as successes, like I said, I am really just fueled by when somebody says, and we've had this happen before. I read your blog post and now I want to be a cattle order buyer. Like your life's work, the career you're going to commit yourself to, that's a huge decision. So if we can have a part of that, every time that happens, it's a huge thrill for me. And then of course, our primary business is working with companies to help them find the right person. And whenever I, have a call 3 months later and the candidate's doing great, loving the job, and the client's really happy because they're doing a great job, that's extremely rewarding.
Yeah. So when I think about a personal brand, I think of authenticity as being one of the key pillars of creating an effective personal brand. I think a lot of people think, oh, I've got to put my best foot forward on social media and pretend to be someone that I'm not, or pretend to be a success when I'm really not, there
Yeah.
yet. So there's that part of it. And on the other side of it, it's, how do you really be authentic if you don't really know, who you are, right? And so what's been your journey to kind of understand who is Tim and what is the work that Tim is doing, and communicating that to other people so they understand it cohesively? How have you stayed authentic in that, or what do you do to stay authentic in that?
Yeah, I think I've had to give myself time. I wasn't confident in being my authentic self on every social platform the moment I joined. So, you listen, you kind of slowly discover who you are and take small baby steps. And I think, you hit the nail on the head though. That authenticity has to be real. Like, you could see a market opportunity for farmland real estate investing, but don't go tomorrow and out of nowhere pretend like you are, name yourself Farmland Ninja and, go out and try to be personal brand Farmland Ninja. It won't work. And so what would be better is documenting your own journey of learning the farmland market. Say, look, and there's tons of value in being a novice and just saying, I don't know anything. I'm just going to ask these experts. And there's a lot of value in that. But be real. I think that's an important part of the personal brand.
Yeah. And then to stay checking into that from time to time to make sure you're staying on course with it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's where, you and I are part of a group that meets every other week. And I think there's a lot of just really, really honest conversation that goes on. And I think that's a great way to keep yourself in check, is have a group.
Yeah. So what are kind of your go-to tools or resources or people that you look to when you're thinking about how to create a personal brand, or how to maintain that personal brand? What are some of the things that you use, or the people that you go to?
Yeah, I think, it has to start with authenticity. So I certainly, personal brand's different in that it's not like recruiting, where I can just go, oh, hey, Scott Love is a really successful recruiter, so I'm just going to go emulate everything he does, right? So personal brand's a little bit different than that, but certainly people that I look at as really putting their best foot forward in their personal brand. Definitely, Gary Vee already mentioned, but Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income, I really like his stuff. James Altucher, I listen to his podcast and read as much of his writing as I possibly can. In the recruiting space, which is more directly related to what I'm trying to do, because he's been very successful on LinkedIn, especially. There's a guy by the name of Adam Karpiak, I think is how you say his last name. So he's somebody I look up to as far as how he's positioning himself in the recruiting space. Those are some places I look, but I think, look for the intersections. Look for what's unique about me is I love agriculture, I love people, and that's my intersection. So, that's where my personal brand sort of starts to take shape. So look for the intersections that might be unique to you.
Are there any tools that you use tactically that help you maintain that brand, or any resources that you've built out yourself on creating that brand when you're working with other people that you'd want to share?
Yeah, I use all sorts of tools. Let me think about the ones that are most helpful for personal brand. I don't think there's a better platform out there right now for personal brand than podcasting. People get to hear your voice literally in their ears, and it can develop a really a relationship at scale. So podcasting, there's all sorts of tools I use there. I could go into those, but I think that's something to look at. Other tools, you and I had mentioned CoSchedule. I use CoSchedule for more social media type stuff. And then just personal productivity tools. I use Trello. I'm looking at my tabs right now. Trello, Evernote, Slack. I've got recruiting tools. So I've got quite a stack of just personal productivity softwares.
Yeah. Have you written any ebooks or anything on this topic, or anything on your own site that I could share a link to when we post this? Or
yeah, you got a sneak peek of it. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it yet, but we just did a social media for ag recruiting. I shared it with a very small group initially and got some feedback, and so I'm going to tweak a few things, and then I will release this back out. But if you go to let's say
right now on a tab to look at today.
Okay, well, yeah, let me know, because I'll make some additional tweaks based on your feedback.
Yeah.
If you go to, and let me go to agrad.com under resources, it's the first thing you'll see.
Okay.
Which is social media for ag recruiting. Even if you're not in ag recruiting, I pick, I think, 7 or 8 examples of, I think, people using social media well to develop that brand, and I think it can be useful for people even outside of recruiting.
Yeah. Well, cool. Do you have any last thoughts on a personal brand that you want to share before we wrap up?
Love LinkedIn for personal brand. Put content out there. Take baby steps. And I think if you've got to find a platform and a voice that matches your style. For me, that's podcasting. That may be video, maybe writing, and maybe just being a whiz at Pinterest, which I know nothing about. But find what matches your style and just keep putting content out. I'm just now starting to realize the power of SEO 3 years into this, where I'm having posts from 2015, 2016, generate a ton of traffic all of a sudden out of nowhere. So sometimes you got to just trust the process, and that results will come, and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's just be consistent, be authentic, share things without expecting something in return from people, because people will pick up on if you're just sharing something to try to sell something.
Yes. Don't always link to your website. Add value. Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a call to action to buying something from you on everything. I think it's, Gary V's jab, right hook. He kind of talks about that.
Yeah.
And then for me, I also like Jeffrey Gitomer's Little Red Book of Selling. He kind of shares some ideas on that too.
Okay. I'll have to check that out. I haven't read that one. Yeah.
First inspired me to kind of do more in this space, which ended up getting us connected eventually. So
cool.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and look forward to broadcasting this and getting other people's thoughts. So if you're watching this and you have thoughts or stories that you have on how you created a personal brand or things that you're doing with it, feel free to comment or reply or tag both of us in it. And we'd love to have a conversation with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter.